You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
Hey everybody, I'm Sean Reynolds, the owner of Summit Properties Northwest, Reynolds & Kline Appraisal, and your host of the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. Today, we are talking about REI, Recreational Equipment Incorporated. Now, they've built a brand new campus, and I'm pointing this way for those of you guys can see me on YouTube. For those of you who can't, I'm pointing to, on the podcast, I am pointing to the northwest of my office, and I think it's just over a mile from here. REI, who's an outdoor retailer, has built just this beautiful campus that was supposed to happen. All the employees were supposed to move in this summer, but COVID hit, and guess what? Retail has not done great things for the industry with the whole shutdown. So we're going to take a look at this story. The story is why REI is putting its brand new Bellevue headquarters on the market. I think we kind of know, but I think it's really interesting that you can have something like COVID come along, and it's changing the way people are doing business, especially retail. I think a lot of retailers are looking at things going, okay, people have made this shift online. Our brick and mortar stuff, and especially it isn't doing great, and especially our employees, we're handling that differently. So many companies have just basically said, all right, all employees at home through 2021, sometime in 2021. If you can work from home, you work from home. And there's this big debate between whether productivity is greater at home or it's greater in the office. Need that collaboration in the office, yet you get the Rona in the office. So I think a lot of companies that are in a transition are maybe pulling the reins back in, and they're reanalyzing things as they have to do. Because for a lot of companies right now, and a lot of the podcasts I'm doing, it's about how different businesses are being impacted. Some are being impacted by the protesters. Some are being impacted by COVID-19 and shutdowns and restrictions. And others are just being impacted by so few people out and about. I have a conversation just about every day. Somebody talking to me about how little traffic there is, or how they've only gone shopping for this maybe once. They don't go to all of those stores they used to. I don't either. I like to go shopping, but the only places I've really gone shopping are like Home Depot and Costco and the grocery store. Essential, basic stuff. So things like REI, I have been to an REI store since all the retail stores opened up. And REI was busy. I can't remember what I was there for. A return, something. I wasn't buying anything, but it was super busy. And people who are into REI are really into REI. I used to do a lot of mountain climbing. That's why Summit Properties is called Summit Properties Northwest and not Sea Level Properties Northwest. So I spent a lot of time at REI and other kind of specialty mountaineering stores. And REI is, it's a dynamite store. It's got everything you need for the outdoors, and it's expensive, and yet it's really good in equipment, and they've always had an amazing return policy. So why REI is putting its brand new Bellevue headquarters on the market. That's the second time I've read that. But yeah, this is a Fortune magazine article, and it's by Phil Waba, and this is on August 12, 2020. So REI said on Wednesday, that was last Wednesday, it is looking to sell its brand new headquarters campus near Seattle in Bellevue, here in Bellevue, just up the block, to bolster its finances and amid a sharp pandemic-related sales decline. The Outdoor Gear Cooperative had lofty dreams for a new corporate campus in 2016 when it announced its plans to move from Kent, Washington, which is about, is that 12 miles to the southwest of Bellevue, probably, from Kent, Washington to Bellevue Spring District, 20 miles from Seattle. 20 miles from Seattle, that is not correct. Offering its 1,400 headquarters staff the most modern of office amenities. Those were to include features such as 2 large outdoor courtyards connected by bridges, and a facade with large windows and garage doors that roll up, according to Fast Company. Alas, due to the COVID-19 outbreak that led REI stores to close for weeks, I think it was like months, it is not to be. REI Chief Executive Eric Artz told employees in a video call Wednesday that selling the newly finished campus, into which staff was to have moved this summer, will likely yield a profit and put the company on safer financial footing. So when I read this article, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. This is a massive cash flow issue They're a retailer that's been around a long time. I don't know if you know the history, but Jim Whittaker and his twin brother Lou, they were famous mountaineers, and I think they're still both alive. Jim Whittaker was one of the original employees at REI. I think it was Lou Anderson. Did I say Lou Whittaker? Yeah, Lou Whittaker and Jim. Jim Whittaker was the first American to summit Mount Everest, not Mount Rainier, Mount Everest in 1963. So he put American mountaineering on the map and generated a ton of interest for REI back in the 60s. My first venture to REI was in, I think, 1977 or 1978. And it was when they had their first massive warehouse in Capitol Hill. And it was literally this old building, and there'd just be boxes of stuff on the ground. And it's because back then, all the mountaineering gear and outdoor equipment was coming from Europe, and they were just getting it kind of random, willy-nilly. There wasn't a real mountaineering, there wasn't a real outdoor scene here in the Northwest. That hadn't really developed yet. So any outdoor equipment was coming from Europe. And I remember getting this pair of boots. I think they were Italian boots. Italy's always been really into mountain climbing. I got a pair of old secondhand boots, but they were really cool. My dad dropped like $400, and in 1970, call it 77, 78, that was a ton of money. That'd be like, I don't know, like dropping $1,500 today on a bunch of mountaineering gear. I'm sure my mom wasn't impressed, but it was a family event, so let's go spend some money. And we had 2 enormous shopping carts, and I remember doing that. I remember just going down these windy, narrow aisles because it was an old building, just all this gear and stuff. And it was a pretty cool experience. And the REIs today, they're so modern, they're so sleek. And I see them in shopping malls in like Dallas and places where there's no mountaineering, but they love their outdoors, and there's a lot of water sports and stuff like that. So if you haven't been to an REI store, take a look at an REI store. They're pretty cool. The downtown flagship Seattle one has this enormous rock climbing wall, pretty cool. Bunch of other stuff. Some of them have like bike centers and just all this cool stuff. But like any other retailer right now, they are having a difficult time. And I think this is a smart move to maybe recoup some of their money from an operation standpoint, because this isn't a store. This is office space we're talking about here. So I think everybody's realized, okay, we can have our employees work basically wherever they are. And maybe we do that until things kind of get a little bit more sure-footed with the economy, maybe until we get a vaccine for the coronavirus, maybe until people kind of get used to the idea of wearing a mask out in public, all that. We get past all this 2020 stuff that's just been ridiculous. It's been so difficult. And when I say ridiculous, I just mean it's like, got to just deal with more stuff. There's more stuff to hassle with. And for retailers and people who make their business with people going out, they're really struggling right now. That is just not happening. People especially are not shopping for stuff they don't need because people just don't really want to go out, don't want to get the Rona. So continuing on here, these dollars would also play an important role in stabilizing our business through the ongoing impacts of current disruptions, said Arts, according to a transcript of the call shared with Fortune. The CEO noted that REI's business had fared better than initially feared, but cautioned the pandemic is far from over. And especially for somebody who is so heavy-centric on retail, where you've got a store, people love to go in, try stuff out, the great return policy. Online is one thing, but when you want to try on a pair of boots, you want to try them on in the store. They've got these cool little walking places. The one in Redmond did. I don't know if the new Bellevue one does. But now I'm just babbling about my experiences at REI because it's a cool store and it's fun stuff. So if you haven't gone there, go there if you get a chance. If you're into the outdoor. If you're not, you're going to look around and go, this is a bunch of overpriced, ridiculous stuff I don't need. And you know what? If it doesn't fit your lifestyle, it is. It's not good. You get like a really good headlamp. Use that. Maybe a really good first aid kit, something like that. Everybody can use that. Who can't use that? Prior to the onset of COVID-19, REI had been on a hot streak. Sales rose 12.3% last year to hit $3.1 billion. But having stores closed for weeks devastated business, and the company said last month it would cut about 25% of headquarters jobs. Ouch. That's not good. Reducing the need for so much office space. REI continues to open stores, however. So you've got this shift of, okay, we got to focus on our moneymakers And having a bunch of office space, even though it is really cool and we thought this is where we're going to revisit that, and we no longer need this office space out of here. I also think it's because Bellevue real estate is really expensive. The site that they built this REI headquarters on is an old Coke plant or an old Safeway plant. The Coke plant is still there across the street, but it's an old Safeway plant, and it's being rebuilt into just these kind of mid-rise apartment complexes, condos, just all kinds of stuff. It's a big deal here on the Bell Red corridor, and that's where my office is, and that's where we're shooting this video. But Bellevue is super expensive. Dirt here is super expensive. You watch people building things in other parts of the country, and you're like, yeah, you couldn't do that in Seattle. Things are too expensive here. So they're going to sell arguably one of their most expensive assets, REI is, and free up some cash to, not because they're looking at redeveloping into other stuff, but it's more of a survival thing. They're probably looking at their balance sheet going, okay, our sales just dropped horrifically. We don't know what the future looks like. Nobody knows with retail. We're doing okay with our online sales, but we're going to lighten up this really, really intensive capital investment. Let's sell that. That'll free up some cash, give us some breathing room. Maybe we'll get down the road where we can see where things are. I was watching a video with David Robinson, the admiral of San Antonio Spurs basketball player, and he's a big real estate investor, and he was talking about how retail stores right now are kicking the can down the road, meaning they are trying to buy enough time to get to a point where they can figure out if they're going to make it or not. And that's essentially what REI is doing here, right? They're kicking the can down the road, picking up some cash along the way, maybe getting rid of an asset they no longer need in today's market, or they no longer want to have. Instead of a swanky new headquarters, REI will have multiple smaller satellite offices in the greater Seattle area that will reduce commuting time for employees. All right, that makes sense. The company says this approach will make it easier to attract talent that might not be willing to relocate to Metro Seattle. Arts expects the majority of headquarters staff to work from home through at least the end of this year. And I think that's where most big companies are at, right? Let's see what 2021 looks like. Let's see if 2020 works itself out, and maybe people are going to feel a little more comfortable going back to the office in 2021. At the same time, the CEO acknowledged that something can be lost by not having people working in a central location. You miss hallway conversations. Yep, you do. No doubt about it. You miss collaboration. You miss that creative energy when you've got a group of people. All that stuff, not there. Zoom call does not... It doesn't take up the place of conversations around the water cooler. You miss in-person work sessions. You miss our incredible cultural moments, he told staff. Yeah, you do miss that. But by doing that, you don't get the Rona. He is not the only CEO facing this dilemma. Shopify CEO Toby Lutke told Fortune in May that he expects most staff to work remotely in the future, well past the pandemic, and is rethinking office space. I think a ton of retailers right now are rethinking office space because that business model is having a very difficult time attracting people to come into stores. So even a massive company like REI is kind of going, all right, how do we push more sales to online? Some stuff you can sell online, like I said, some stuff doesn't sell quite as well. But do what you got to do, and that's part of the evolution of business, right? And so rethinking office space is definitely something that I think everybody is thinking about, because they're like, all right, I've got a quarter of my office staff going into the office, or maybe less. The people who don't want to go into the office, they're not going into the office. They're getting a hall pass until sometime in 2021. There's very few companies I know that are like, nope, damn it, you're going into the office. We just need you in the office. Doesn't happen. So I think most companies have realized, all right, we can make this work at home. So let's see about that other office space that's about a quarter full or half full or whatever, or we don't think anybody's going to go in until next year. We're going to let that go. We're going to try and sublet it, whatever it takes to get that moved on. But we don't see a need for that office space in the near future, especially given how bad our sales have been over the past, 6 months, 9 months, whatever it is by that time. At the same time, many corporate chief executives worry about the longer-term impact on culture, creativity, and teamwork of having people scatter to the winds. Walmart CEO Doug McMillon told shareholders in June, "How do you get to know people? How do you get a sense for what the culture is like? Culture inside a company is such an important aspect." That company is forging ahead with its plan to open a new headquarters campus in 2025. All right, senior executives at IBM, Johnson & Johnson, and MasterCard recently told Fortune that while working from home has benefits, ultimately, companies could not do without it in-person collaborations to foster culture. But in REI's case, a new modern campus would have been a luxury that must, at least for the moment, take a backseat to the fundamentals of its business, or just staying in business, because that's what retail is struggling with right now, is just how do we keep the doors open? How do we keep this going? This decision allows us to do two things, REI Chief Customer Officer Ben Steele tells Fortune. It allows us to replenish our balance sheet for the disruptions, the coronavirus, but it also allows us to strategically invest in the opportunities we see. That's a nice way of saying, we're going to take this cash, and as stuff comes up, we're going to be able to deal with it. I don't think anybody's investing in opportunities, but people are making shifts in the way that they do business, and they're making shifts in the way that employees are handled. And so much of the bottom line of a company is tied up in renting office space. It's a big, big percentage of most companies' overhead. And if you can shift that a little bit, still get your productivity where you need it to be, maybe you don't give up all your office space. Maybe you give up some of it. But I think in REI's case, they definitely realized, okay, we're going to give up this fancy new campus that would have been really cool to have, but we don't really need it. And if we're successful and we can get through this, some of our competitors are probably going to go under. Maybe down the road, we build this campus and it makes sense. Maybe they don't. Maybe the whole commercial structure is going to change, and we're going to see a morphing. And it'll be just like when you watch a video now and you see all these people congregated in an area and you think, they're not socially distancing. You'll see commercial office space, and you'll see, clusters of buildings and stuff. And we'll be like, oh yeah, that must have been before the coronavirus. All right. So that's it for me on this podcast. REI selling its new fancy Bellevue corporate headquarters, but I think it makes sense. I think that's a smart move. And if you need to let something go in the era of the Rona, you let that extra office space go, because if you don't need it, if you got people working from home and you're still doing okay, that's what you do. You adapt, just like every business does, given the circumstances that the coronavirus has brought. So once again, I'm Sean Reynolds from Summit Properties Northwest, Reynolds & Kline Appraisal. Thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. Love to have you subscribe. Hit the like button for this video if you're watching on YouTube. Hit the notification bell so that you get notified each time our new content comes out. All right, that's it for me. I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll catch you then. Bye for now. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out.